In one of my previous videos, you guys requested this. So today's video is exactly what you expect. Even though this team isn't exactly quite new anymore, here's my take on the Sukokomon team. This guide will provide everything you need to know from how to build each character to how to play the correct and efficient rotation. Before we get into the nitty gritty, many of you may be wondering what the heck is the Sukokomon team and what does it do? Well, in my last Kokomi video, I gave a digestible summary of what the team does, so let's roll a few clips from that just in case there are people watching that don't really know what we're dealing with yet. Sukokomon stands for Sucrose, Kokomi, and Pokemon. The team name is quite silly and how it's derived is also quite silly. The team consists of Sucrose, Fischl, Xiangling, and Kokomi, where essentially Sucrose is just a Pokemon trainer with Kokomi's jellyfish, Oz, and Guoba. As simple as this may sound, this is a heavily theory-crafted team that puts difficult concepts into practice. For those who don't know, Electrocharged is a unique reaction because when you create the reaction, the elements are not consumed, and instead the Hydro and Electro persist on the enemy affected by the reaction. This is super important because, for example, when we swirl with Sucrose, you'll get not one but two swirls because both Hydro and Electro were available to react with Sucrose's Anemo. You might think that was a lot of information, but that's just the beginning of the Sukokomon team. Now we can combine Guoba to get even more reactions out of Sucrose. And no, I'm not talking about Guoba's flame, I'm talking about Guoba himself. Guoba has a special property that applies pyro onto Guoba himself when you see the exclamation point above his head. Sucrose can take this pyro that he applies to himself and swirl it to react with the Hydro and Electro from Electrocharge to create both Overload and Vaporize reactions. So in the end, this team gives us Electrocharged, Overload, Vaporize, and Swirl all simultaneously. Now that you know some of the basics about how the team functions, let's build upon that knowledge and talk about how to gear your characters for this team. As mentioned before, this team consists of Sucrose, Kokomi, Fischl, and Xiangling, and unfortunately, both builds and character substitutions are limited to a few changes as of right now. Starting with Sucrose's build, we have a super standard build where we just stack as much elemental mastery as possible. For your weapon, we always want these sacrificial fragments for its passive and large amount of elemental mastery, but there are technically other options you can use as well. Things like Mappa Mare, Favonius Codex, or Hakushin Ring are pretty good options, but my personal advice is to do your best to stick to sacrificial fragments. For Sucrose's artifacts, we have the normal 4-set Viridescent Veneerer and triple EM in the Sands, Goblet, and Circlet. Energy recharge can be viable in these Sands, but for the most part you want to just hyper-focus ER and EM in artifact substats. Next we have Kokomi, who also has a standard build. For her weapon, we almost always want to have the Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers. Again, you can technically use other weapons like Everlasting Moonglow or Prototype Amber, but again, TTDS is pretty much non-negotiable because we need this to boost Xiangling in the absence of Bennett. Additionally, the rotation is set up where Kokomi goes right before Xiangling, allowing Kokomi to be the buffer for Xiangling, not Sucrose. For artifacts, we have a choice between two artifact sets. If Xiangling is your main source of damage outside of Sucrose's swirls, then the 4-set Tenacity of the Millilith is the set that you want to go. On the other hand, if you want Kokomi to deal more damage herself, we can choose the new 4-set Ocean Hued Clam. Regardless of which set you choose, we want an HP % Sands, Hydro damage bonus Goblet, and healing bonus Circlet for Kokomi. Artifact substats should heavily focus energy recharge, then after that you can work to get in some HP %, flat HP, elemental mastery, or even some attack %. Our third character is Fischl, and out of the Sukokomon team, she definitely has one of the most flexible builds. Weapon options are pretty much anything that gives her damage, but some of the best options that a lot of people like to choose are the Stringless, Polar Star, LJ of the End, Windbloom Ode, the Alley Hunter, and Skyward Harp. Out of these weapons, a high refinement Stringless is generally considered the best in slot. In artifacts, any combination of the two sets listed on screen will work. This could be a combination with the 2-set Thundering Fury and the 2-set Shimenawa, or maybe the 2-set Gladiator with the 2-set Wanderer's Troop. Ultimately, the decision depends on whichever artifact set gives you the best substats. As long as you're getting a good balance of crit rate, crit damage, attack %, and elemental mastery, I guarantee the build will work. With that being said, the artifact stats will want a standard DPS option with attack percent in the sands, electro damage bonus in the goblet, and crit rate or crit damage in the circlet. Last but not least, we have Xiangling's build. She is definitely the most difficult out of the 4 characters to build because without Bennett, she has extremely high energy recharge requirements. For Xiangling's weapons, there are 2 options that I found to be the most practical in my own testing. These 2 options are the Favonius Lance and Kitane Cross Spear. Favonius Lance is the best option for the Sukokomon team because we don't have Bennett. Giving yourself the chance to get extra energy particles from the passive as if we actually did have Bennett on the team is valuable beyond belief. The second weapon suggestion that I want to make is the Kitane Cross Spear because its passive also gives flat energy for Xiangling. This Inazuma prototype serves as the completely free-to-play option and really shines once you start getting higher refinements. In artifacts, we want the 4-set Emblem of Severed Fate 100% of the time, and this is non-negotiable as well. Without Bennett, Xiangling needs at least 200% energy recharge as an extremely low estimate. Ideally, in this team, you actually want anywhere between 220 to 250 energy recharge depending on your own weapon refinements. And of course, focusing energy recharge heavily affects our ability to build crit stats. This is where the 4-set ESF comes in because it does a pretty good job at making up for our lost crit stats by giving us tons of elemental burst damage with our energy recharge. Regardless, the best build is still going to be ER in the sands, pyro damage bonus in the goblet, and crit rate or crit damage in the circlet. However, if you're like my free-to-play account and just can't get these artifacts for Xiangling, you can really just throw any piece with attack percent or EM on Xiangling as long as it has stellar energy recharge substats. So for example, you could run ER in the sands, pyro damage in the goblet, and attack percent in the circlet if you wanted to. The bottom line is, as long as you have a ton of energy recharge, things should be good enough even without enough crit stats. Crit stats are what make your damage optimal and not just passable. With that, you should now be equipped with all the information you need to build each character to their max potential in the Sukokomon team. Last but not least, we have by far the most important part of the team, which is the optimal rotation. Unfortunately, I don't have much contact with the theory crafters at Genshin Mains, but if I'm not mistaken, the user who discovered this specific rotation goes by the name of Terraflop. If I'm wrong, please do correct me down in the comments below, but otherwise their YouTube channel will be linked down in the description, so definitely check them out. Anyways, just like my national team guides, I'm going to quickly breeze through the rotation first, then I'll go back to each step and explain exactly what each step accomplishes. This way you won't just memorize the rotation, and instead you will understand the Sukokomon team enough to eventually master the rotation if you choose to do so. To begin the rotation, we want a Fischl E, Kokomi E, Xiangling E, 1 Sucrose normal attack into E, 2 Sucrose normal attacks into an E into another 2 Sucrose normal attacks, Xiangling Q, Kokomi Q, 2 Kokomi normal attacks into a charge attack, then 2 more normal attacks into a dash, and another 2 normal attacks into a charge attack, Fischl Q, Xiangling E, a Sucrose normal attack into an E, another Sucrose normal attack into a Q, and then finally Sucrose normal attacking until all abilities are ready again, aka when both Oz and Guoba disappear. As you can tell, this rotation is ridiculously long. Just like I mentioned at the start, this team puts heavily theory-crafted ideas into practice, and it's definitely no walk in the park. However, if you like skill expression in games, this is probably one of my favorite teams to use if you're looking for a challenge. To start the in-depth breakdown of what's happening here, steps 1 and 2 are simply just to get electro charged on the enemy. Step 3 places Guoba down so we can swirl Guoba in step 4. The reason why we normal attack once before pressing our skill is because this gives us the perfect timing for swirling Guoba. When the steps are executed seamlessly, 1 normal attack into a Sucrose E will swirl Guoba when he has the exclamation point above his head. As I explained at the start of the video, swirling Guoba while he has the exclamation point above his head will take Pyro and spread it to the enemies affected by Electrocharge to create a ton of reactions. If you have C1 and or Sacrificial Fragments, step 5 allows you to get the huge swirl a second time by normal attacking twice, then using Sucrose's skill again. This time, 2 normal attacks are needed to buy time for Guoba instead of just 1 because we do not need to use up time switching Sucrose in if she's already on the field. Normal attack twice once you're done unloading swirls from Sucrose, and you can switch to Xiangling to activate her elemental burst. At this point, you should still have the TTDS buff from Kokomi, which you can snapshot onto Xiangling's Pyronado. After that, we want to switch to Kokomi and activate her elemental burst. The ideal combo with Kokomi is to normal attack twice, then charge attack, normal attack twice, then dash, and finally one more round of 2 normal attacks and 1 charge attack. What this does is that it maximizes Kokomi's Hydro application for both Fischl and Xiangling to react with. If you like the more theory-crafted terms, this is essentially abusing the internal cooldown on her attack string. Once we're done with Kokomi's normal and charge attacks, we want to switch back to Fischl and refresh the field time of Oz by using her elemental burst. By now, we're at the tail end of the rotation and we're really just using the remaining time to prepare to start from the beginning again. In case you need a tiny bit more energy on Xiangling, we can place Guoba down again and switch to Sucrose to normal attack once, then use her elemental skill to swirl Guoba. So after we swirl Guoba once, we can instead normal attack once, then place Sucrose's elemental burst down to get out as much extra damage as possible. Beyond that, continue normal attacking with Sucrose until Guoba and Oz disappear. Once both of the pets are gone, that should be a signal that most of our abilities are ready to go again, meaning we can restart the rotation from the very beginning. Of course, starting from the beginning means we start from step 1 and 2, which is Fischl's skill into Kokomi's skill. Overall, before I end this video, I just want to say even though this may not be a top meta team like the Raiden National team, it's definitely one of the most interesting meta teams I've ever seen in Genshin Impact's history. If you're dying to use any of the 4 characters, or if you're just looking for a challenge, I definitely recommend checking out the Sukokomon team. With that, that's all I have time for today. If you enjoyed this guide or thought it was useful, be sure to support both the video and the channel. You can follow me on Twitch, join my Discord, sub to the YouTube channel, or whatever people do nowadays. Other than that, it's the same as always. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.